My name is Calvin Reyes, and for nearly 2 decades, I was the cornerstone of innovation at Stratton Forge Solutions, a mid-sized engineering firm with massive government contracts and a reputation for reliability. I wasn't flashy, I wasn't political. I was the guy who stayed late, who remembered the soil codes by heart, who solved design failures with pencil sketches before the software even loaded. At 52, I thought I had earned some semblance of security. Then came Tessa Vaughn, 34, MBA from an elite West Coast university, wore heels that echoed down hallways like warnings, and talked about synergy as if it were concrete and steel. She was brought in as the new director of operations, tasked with streamlining deliverables and modernizing workflows. She didn't bother learning anyone's name her first week, but she learned mine quickly. I was apparently a legacy inefficiency. It happened on a Tuesday. The conference room was full. My team, my project leads, my junior analysts who still turned to me when the specs didn't make sense. Tessa stood at the head of the table with a manicured poise, her voice devoid of warmth. We are restructuring, and effective immediately, Calvin Reyes is no longer with Stratton Forge. I blinked. Just once. Then I nodded. I didn't ask for an explanation. I didn't beg for clarity. I simply stood, adjusted my blazer, and looked at my team one last time. They couldn't even meet my eyes. Not out of disrespect, but out of helplessness. Some of them had been hired by me, mentored by me. They weren't ready. And neither was she. Because the infrastructure proposal Tessa was about to present, the $45 million bid to the Federal Transit Authority, wasn't just a deck of slides. It was a puzzle of regulatory nuance, geotechnical forecasts, and years of relationship building with the Bureau's directors. The design plans existed in my notes. The trust existed in my voice. She had neither. I packed up my notebooks, the navy one with my initials, the leather-bound binder with my annotations, the coffee mug from my daughter that read, "Blueprint Boss." And I walked out. Not in anger, in quiet certainty that sometimes the worst mistake a leader can make is believing they know everything. From the moment Tessa Vaughn arrived, I could feel the chill settle into the bones of Stratton Forge. She didn't raise her voice or bark orders. Her control was colder than that, efficient, calculated, always wrapped in that smug smile like she'd already seen the end game. And maybe she had, or thought she had. The first signal came subtly. A Thursday morning, I showed up to the 9 a.m. client alignment call, the one I'd coordinated weekly for 6 years with the Bureau of Transit, only to find the invite canceled. Streamlining, her assistant had said. I brushed it off. One misstep. The next week, Tessa sent out a revised structural framework for the Riverside Tunnel retrofit. My proposal, months in the making, had been gutted. Columns I'd designed for flood resilience were swapped with cheaper steel. She added a note at the bottom. Optimized for budget. Re-review in next phase. It wasn't just reckless. It was dangerous. Then came the boardroom ambush. I walked in late to a quarterly planning session, stuck in traffic after a field visit, only to find my proposal already on the screen. Same blueprints, same engineering rationale, minus one thing. My name. The footnote that once read, "Prepared by Calvin Reyes, P.E.," had been erased, replaced with a generic operations team lead. She didn't look at me when I sat down. Just kept talking about innovation and agility and a future-forward mindset. My fists clenched under the table. My jaw locked. But I didn't explode. I didn't protest. Because by then, I had already started documenting. Every time she canceled a meeting I was supposed to lead. Every time she reworked a design without sign-off. Every time she forgot to include me on an email thread with our federal contacts. I had pages, screenshots, meeting transcripts, even audio recordings of her offering streamlined alternatives to clients, options she didn't understand, and I could prove it. But the most important records weren't digital. They were mine. 3 leather-bound sketchbooks, one for design iterations, one for soil and material logs, and one for relationship intel. Things you could never store on a spreadsheet, like the fact that the Bureau's procurement director, Sylvia Hahn, despised jargon and trusted me because I once noticed she preferred physical scale models over digital mock-ups, or that the tunnel's chief engineer, Julian Marks, had once shifted a multi-million-dollar spec just because I suggested a load-adjusted arching system that he didn't see at first glance. That trust? Built in ink and memory. And none of it was in the cloud. While Tessa boasted about cutting storage costs and migrating to a lean cloud-based system, she had no idea the real specs lived in the margins of my notebooks. So I played along, sat through meetings, nodded when she claimed our team needed to evolve. I let her take credit. Let her feel the weight of a crown she hadn't earned. Until she made one mistake too many. 3 days before she fired me, she walked into my office holding a copy of my Hollowdale Transit proposal. "Calvin," she said with a tone that tried to sound warm but landed like plastic, "Marcus asked me to take point on this. We'll present Friday, so I'll need you to upload the client specs to the server by EOD." I looked at her, expression blank. I said, "Of course." I didn't. I couldn't, because the specs she wanted weren't digitized. They were in the binder that sat in my briefcase, the one I took home every night. The one with ink-smudged calculations, hand-drawn reinforcements, timeline matrices, and notes in red that said things like, "Sylvia won't approve unless we address drainage offset. Don't forget." Friday was going to be beautiful. But that Tuesday, she jumped a gun. Fired me. In public. Maybe she thought that by asserting dominance in front of the team, she'd cement her position. Or maybe she panicked when she realized the specs weren't showing up in the shared folders. Either way, she sealed her fate with those words, effective immediately. She dismissed me like a name on a spreadsheet. But I wasn't a name. I was the memory of that entire department, the nervous system. The quiet operator who held the unspoken knowledge that kept projects from collapsing. When I packed up my things, I didn't take revenge. I took my property, my sketches, my notes, and the respect of my team. Beth, my senior structural lead, followed me to the elevator. "Tessa has no idea what she just did," she whispered. "No," I replied. "But she will by Friday." I didn't get a severance check, a farewell speech, or even a generic HR email thanking me for my years of service. But I walked out with something more valuable than a paycheck: trust, and the knowledge that my value didn't live in a title or a cubicle. It lived in the minds of the people I'd worked with for 2 decades, engineers, clients, partners, who knew what I could do even when my own company forgot. By Wednesday afternoon, I was in sweats, nursing black coffee in my home office, when my phone buzzed. Calvin? The voice was familiar. Deputy Director Sylvia Hahn from the Bureau of Transit. She didn't mince words. Why is Margot Wells suddenly taking lead on the Hollowdale presentation? I let the silence stretch just enough to make the air feel tight. Then I replied with measured calm. She's new. Maybe give her a shot. She exhaled. She doesn't know the specs. She just forwarded me a slide deck with stock images and no soil or water table analysis. Is this a joke? It's not my problem anymore. She paused. That project was yours, Calvin. You and I spent months working through drainage offsets, street tapering, even sidewalk load-bearing. Is she bluffing? I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just let her draw the conclusions. I hung up, heart pounding, not with fear, but with clarity. If Margot thought she could replicate 15 years of trust and nuance with a Canva template, she was about to learn a very public lesson. And so was Stratton Forge. By Friday morning, 4 firms had reached out. One was Stratos Form, an aggressive, innovative firm I had turned down 3 years ago when Stratton begged me to stay. This time, the email came from their CEO himself. Calvin, we heard what happened. Stratos has been following your work on Hollowdale and your broader contributions to infrastructure resilience. If you're available, we'd like to offer you a senior design role, full autonomy, your own team, and a signing bonus. Let us know if you're ready to build again. I stared at the screen, then laughed. Not out of joy, but out of disbelief. Margot had fired me thinking she was cutting costs. What she had done was spark my evolution. By Thursday afternoon, I was sketching again. Not for Stratton, for Stratos. I pulled out my old notebook, the one Margot never understood, and started drafting a bolder version of the Hollowdale spec. Not just patching old blueprints, reinventing them. Integrating newer water flow tech, seismic-resistant supports, even designing dual-purpose culverts that doubled as green corridors. I knew what Sylvia valued. I knew what Julian Marks, Hollowdale's chief engineer, expected. I didn't have to guess. And I wasn't alone. Beth, my former structural lead, texted me after hours. Margot's unraveling. She tried to explain your sidewalk tapering matrix to the Bureau and used the wrong unit of measurement, inches instead of degrees. I smirked. How'd that go? They asked for you by name. I didn't respond. I just sent her a PDF attachment titled Cal Reyes Proposal, Hollowdale Revised. A few hours later, my phone rang. Stratos Form's CEO again. Is this real? This revision is 10 steps ahead of what Hollowdale has seen. Did you already prep this? I lived it. It's all in my head. Always has been. We're submitting this version, and Calvin, if this lands, we'll need you leading the entire metro corridor expansion. I felt a shift in my chest. Not ego, not revenge. Purpose. At 7:45 p.m., I got a call from a block number. Calvin? It was Marcus, the CEO of Stratton. His voice was low, unsure. I've been informed that Hollowdale has rejected our proposal and awarded the contract elsewhere. I said nothing. Sylvia said it was due to insufficient technical documentation. Still nothing. We also heard you've joined Stratos Form? Pause. Then I replied, not yet, but if you're calling to ask me back, don't. I'm calling to understand. I almost laughed. Then start by asking yourself why a woman who couldn't tell concrete PSI from water pressure was ever put in charge of a $30 million urban overhaul. He exhaled. This has set us back years. No, Marcus, you set yourself back. You trusted flash over substance. You fired the foundation and kept the facade. I hung up.
Not out of spite, out of peace. Later that night, my daughter Casey came into the office holding a bowl of popcorn. "Mom says you're scary when you're quiet," she teased. "I'm not angry. I'm focused." "What now?" I pointed to the sketches. "Now we build."
By Thursday night, the silence from Stratton Forge felt heavier than any storm. I knew the presentation was Friday at 10 a.m., and I knew Margot wasn't ready. She had data, charts, and design drafts, but no soul behind any of it. No real substance. At 11:27 a.m., my phone buzzed. "Calvin," the voice said. It was Janice Elwood, deputy project head from the Bureau of Urban Engineering. I hadn't spoken to her in 6 months. "Is it true you're not with Stratton anymore?" "That's right," I said, glancing at the sketchpad in front of me. "I've been with Stratosform since Monday." A long pause. Then, "Margot says you're unavailable, that you took your materials with you." I kept my tone even. "She's correct on both." Janice didn't waste time. "We're reopening the Hollowdale contract for rebidding. Are you interested in resubmitting?" I leaned back in my chair. "If I submit, it'll be through Stratosform." "Understood," she said. "Send us whatever you've got. We need it this afternoon." I was ready. The folder was already zipped, the diagrams digitized, and this time I had backing. Within hours, Stratosform submitted our bid, and this time with fully integrated modular expansion, rainwater retention upgrades, and seismic fail-safes Margot hadn't even dreamed of. By Monday, the Bureau had made it official. Stratosform had secured the $30 million Hollowdale contract. It made the front page of the Regional Development Journal. The headline read, "From Fired to First, Stratosform's stunning bid rewrites urban renewal plans." Buried halfway through the article was a quote from Sylvia Hahn. "Only someone with Calvin Reyes's depth could have anticipated the compliance shift we quietly implemented 2 weeks ago. That foresight, not flash, won them the deal." That afternoon, Margot was let go. No farewell party, no team announcement, just an internal email from the CEO, citing strategic misalignment, and a note that the company had underestimated legacy knowledge. They didn't mention her by name, but everyone knew. Beth texted me later. "She tried to pitch your old draft this morning. Didn't even know what Coreflex meant in the material spec. It was embarrassing." The next day, Marcus, Stratton's CEO, called. I almost didn't answer. "Calvin," he said, voice brittle, "I'd like to apologize. What happened with Margot? It was a mistake. It was a choice." I replied. "You're right. Look, we're in a hole. Hollowdale was supposed to anchor our Q4 projections. If there's any chance we could consult with you, I'm not interested." "Calvin, I'm prepared to offer equity, not just a consulting fee." I paused. "I'm not interested in fixing what you broke. I'm interested in building what comes next." That was the difference. I didn't burn the bridge. I just chose not to walk back over it. By the end of the week, Stratosform CEO Victor Shaw hosted a press briefing celebrating our win. Cameras flashed, clients watched, and for the first time in years, I saw my name not as a footnote in some corporate memo, but as the architect of something that mattered again. Victor handed me the mic. Calvin's vision didn't just win as a contract. It reminded us all that experience isn't baggage, it's ballast. It holds a company steady when everything else is moving. I took the mic slowly. For a while, I thought, being let go meant I'd lost my worth. But what I realized is that value doesn't vanish, it just needs the right soil to grow. Applause filled the room. When I stepped down, I caught Beth's eye in the crowd. She was standing beside Tom, who'd recently joined our international expansion team. Later, she whispered,
Stratton's stock dropped 8% this week. Word's getting out. Let it, I said. We weren't building a company out of spite. We were building because it mattered, and because the people who once followed behind were now walking beside me.
The Hollowdale win was just the beginning. Within a week, the Stratusform inbox overflowed with inquiries, some from civic leaders impressed by our urban regeneration model, others from former clients at Stratton who wanted to reconnect now that the face behind their trust had a new business card. Victor, our CEO, called it the Reyes effect. I called it finally being seen. What surprised me most, though, wasn't the validation from external partners. It was who reached out from inside the place that once pushed me out. Beth called me on a Tuesday night. She didn't sound like herself. "Stratton's falling apart," she said bluntly. "Marcus is blaming Margot for the Hollowdale failure, but everyone knows he signed off on her decisions." "I'm not surprised," I said, pouring coffee as if it were some ritual of closure. "There's more," Beth continued. "They've brought in another consultant, a new guy named Jerome. He's already talking about outsourcing the project design team and cutting legacy staff." My grip on the mug tightened. He's doing what Jessica did. Worse. Jessica was arrogant. This one's surgical. Beth paused. Then quietly, "We need a way out." I knew then what I had to do. Not for revenge, but for restoration. Beth, Tom, even Eliza in operations, these were people who had spent years investing in a vision that Marcus was now gutting. They didn't deserve to be left behind. Not again. So I made a plan. By Friday, I'd scheduled lunch with Victor and our CFO, Layla. I pitched the idea. Expand Stratusform's capacity by creating a new integrated design division, staffed by those who truly understood project life cycles and stakeholder communication. They hesitated at first. "You want to bring in Stratton's cast-offs?" Layla asked. "No, I want to bring in the people who made their wins possible. The ones who stayed late, solved crises, and were treated like headcount instead of heart." Victor nodded. "We'll back you on one condition. You run it." I accepted. That weekend, I started calling my old team, not to rescue them, but to offer them a choice. Not all said yes immediately, but by the end of the week, Beth had submitted her resignation, Eliza had accepted our offer, and Tom had already flown in from Seoul to join the expansion. We didn't poach. We built a lifeboat, and people climbed in because they were tired of drowning quietly. 2 months later, Stratusform unveiled its new Integrated Solutions Division. I handpicked the founding team. We weren't flashy, but we were solid. We knew what mattered: trust, clarity, and ownership. No buzzwords, no sudden restructures, just people doing good work together. At the division's soft launch event, Beth pulled me aside. "I never thought I'd feel excited walking into a Monday again. This place, it feels like what Stratton could have been." I nodded. We build what we wish we'd had. Meanwhile, the collapse at Stratton continued. Jerome's restructuring leaked to the press. Investors got nervous. Hollowdale had been the domino, and now others were toppling. By Q3, their urban design portfolio had shrunk by 40%. Marcus called me again. "I heard about your new team," he said. "Some of our remaining clients have asked about moving their projects to Stratusform. That's not legal." "It's not illegal either. They're making independent decisions. You're orchestrating this." "I'm offering people an option. You're the one who made your house so hard to live in." He hung up without another word. That night, I stayed late at the office, reviewing a proposal with Beth. Across the table, she looked up and smiled. Funny how success feels quieter when it's earned. She was right. There were no fireworks, just warmth, a rhythm, a team breathing easier because they knew the floor wouldn't collapse beneath them. Victor walked in around 9 p.m. "Big news," he said. "State Committee just approved your team for the Downtown West Revitalization Grant. $42 million. You're leading." I leaned back in my chair and smiled. Not for the money, not even for the recognition, but because I knew who I was again. And no one could take it this time.
In the end, I didn't need to shout. I didn't need revenge dressed as fire or fury. I just needed clarity and a table where people like me could build without fear of being erased. What happened at Stratton wasn't just corporate mismanagement. It was a cautionary tale about what happens when people confuse titles with wisdom and data with relationships. From the day Margot dismissed me in front of my own team to the quiet collapse of their biggest client deal, every step proved one truth. Leadership isn't about control. It's about care. And no spreadsheet can replace that. When I built the new division at Stratos Form, I wasn't just leading projects. I was rebuilding trust. I was offering something I wish someone had offered me years ago: space to be seen for more than just productivity. Beth, Tom, Eliza, they weren't just my colleagues. They were pieces of a story that had been paused by arrogance and resumed through grace. Together, we proved that you don't have to stay stuck in broken systems. You can leave and build better. Victor once told me, "You don't just carry legacy, Calvin, you design it." Maybe that's what this was all along, a redesign of work, of self-worth, of what we accept and what we no longer will. And Margot? Last I heard, she'd updated her LinkedIn headline to Change Management Specialist. But you can't manage change when you ignore the human beings at the center of it. She didn't just lose a team. She lost the respect that only time and consistency can earn. The clients came, the offers followed, and eventually the story told itself in numbers: growth, trust, retention. But for me, the real victory came one quiet Friday morning when Beth brought in homemade muffins and laughed like she hadn't in months. That sound, that was the win. Sometimes the loudest justice is silence, the kind you leave behind as you rise. If you've ever been undervalued, pushed out, or told your time was up, drop your story in the comments. This space is for you. Like, subscribe, and share this if you believe in second chances, quiet revenge, and the power of doing things right.